Have you ever noticed that certain people change the moment they stand near you? Their voice lowers, their posture shifts, their confidence flickers for just a second. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it happens. And if you're an INFJ, you felt it without fully understanding why. There's something about the INFJ presence that quietly alters the emotional atmosphere of a room. It's not dominance, it's not intimidation, it's perception. People sense, often unconsciously, that they are being seen beyond their surface. Not judged, not attacked, just understood. And that awareness changes behavior in ways most don't even realize. In this video, we're breaking down 7 subtle behaviors people display around an INFJ, small shifts in tone, energy, and interaction that reveal more than words ever could. Some of these might surprise you. Others might finally explain patterns you've noticed your entire life but never named. Watch until the end, because the final sign is the one most INFJs completely overlook, and it reveals more about your quiet influence than you think. If you're part of the Brainy One community, subscribe and stay sharp. And as you watch, ask yourself this: when people are around you, do they become more guarded or more honest? Let's decode it. People lower their tone and energy unconsciously around INFJs. Lower voices. Softer edges. It happens before anyone understands why. An INFJ walks into the room, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a presence that shifts the atmosphere by a few invisible degrees. Conversations that were sharp suddenly round out. Laughter drops half a register. Even the most animated personalities adjust their rhythm as if responding to a frequency only they can feel. The INFJ doesn't demand quiet, yet quiet arrives. They don't command attention, yet attention settles. It isn't intimidation, it's alignment. Their steady gaze, calm breathing, and unhurried posture send a subtle signal that emotional noise won't be rewarded here. And without conscious thought, others begin matching that steadiness. What makes the shift so powerful is that it isn't forced. The INFJ isn't trying to control the room. They are simply grounded within themselves. Their emotional center doesn't fluctuate with every stimulus, so the surrounding chaos has nothing to amplify against. High energy needs reaction to sustain itself. Drama needs friction to grow. But in the presence of someone who neither feeds nor resists it, intensity has nowhere to land. People instinctively recalibrate. Their tone softens because shouting feels unnecessary. Their body language relaxes because posturing feels pointless. Even dominant personalities adjust, sensing that volume won't increase influence here. The INFJ becomes a quiet stabilizer, absorbing turbulence without absorbing identity. This is not weakness. It is psychological gravity. When someone carries internal coherence, others subconsciously move toward balance. The INFJ's composure creates a subtle mirror, encouraging self-regulation in those nearby. People feel it, even if they cannot explain it. They leave the interaction wondering why they spoke more calmly, why they felt slightly more reflective, why their usual edge dissolved. The INFJ rarely comments on the shift, they simply observe it. And that is the quiet power. Without raising their voice, without asserting dominance, they change the emotional temperature of the space. Not through force, but through presence. Others become unusually careful with their words, sensing they're being deeply observed. Pauses where there used to be impulsive speech. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. Around an INFJ, people begin editing themselves mid-conversation, not because they were told to, but because something in the air feels precise. It is the sensation of being fully seen, not judged, not attacked, but examined with quiet intensity. The INFJ's eyes don't dart around the room, they stay present. Their posture doesn't lean aggressively forward, yet it never drifts away. There is a stillness that communicates attention without pressure. And attention, when it is that focused, changes behavior. Words that would normally spill out casually are weighed. Exaggerations are reconsidered. Stories become more accurate. Something in the speaker senses that surface-level performance will not pass unnoticed. This carefulness does not arise from fear. It arises from awareness. INFJs listen beyond vocabulary. They register tone fluctuations, micro-hesitations, the split-second delay before a confident statement. They notice when enthusiasm feels rehearsed or when conviction lacks emotional grounding. None of this is announced aloud, but it is felt. People instinctively realize that this is not an audience impressed by volume or charisma. It is an audience tracking coherence. If the words do not match the energy behind them, the mismatch will be silently recorded. That awareness makes conversations sharper, more deliberate, sometimes even more honest. The INFJ rarely interrupts. They rarely challenge directly. Their restraint creates a psychological mirror where the speaker hears their own inconsistencies amplified in their mind. Over time, this dynamic becomes almost ritualistic. Those who interact with INFJs regularly begin choosing authenticity over embellishment because pretending requires too much effort. They sense that exaggeration will land flat, and manipulation will dissolve in the face of quiet observation. And so, speech becomes more intentional. Not forced, just refined. The INFJ does not demand transparency. They inspire it by refusing to engage with anything less. In their presence, language slows down, sharpens, and aligns. And that is the hidden power. When someone feels deeply observed, they either reveal their truth or carefully retreat from it. Confident personalities soften or recalibrate their dominance. Volume lowers. Posture adjusts. The performance shifts. Around an INFJ, even the most dominant personality senses something that doesn't compete yet doesn't submit. It's not confrontation that causes the recalibration. It's composure. The INFJ doesn't try to overpower the room, doesn't interrupt to assert position, doesn't escalate tone to match intensity. They remain grounded. And that grounded presence disrupts dominance built on pressure. A loud personality expects resistance or compliance. What they encounter instead is steady neutrality. No intimidation. No need to prove. That absence of reaction removes the fuel that dominance feeds on. The dominant individual feels it instantly. Their energy no longer dictates the emotional temperature of the space. True confidence thrives in competition. Fragile dominance depends on control. INFJs expose that difference without effort. When someone speaks forcefully to command attention, the INFJ listens without shrinking or challenging. Their eye contact remains steady, their breathing slow, their responses measured. This calm steadiness acts like a psychological equalizer. It communicates, without words, "I see you, and I am not moved by your display." For individuals used to commanding reactions, this creates a subtle disorientation. The INFJ isn't impressed, isn't threatened, and isn't trying to dominate back. They simply remain unmoved. And being unmoved is often more powerful than pushing back. It forces the dominant personality to adjust, not because they were defeated, but because their usual tactics no longer shape the interaction. Over time, something interesting happens. The loudest voice becomes more measured. The assertive presence becomes more thoughtful. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. They sense they are in the presence of someone who cannot be swayed by force. The INFJ's quiet stability recalibrates the room's hierarchy without announcing it. Dominance that relies on volume softens into genuine leadership, or it fades entirely. The INFJ never asked for control. They never fought for status. Yet their composed energy redefines the balance. And that is the quiet shift few understand. Real power does not need to compete. It simply stands steady until everything around it adjusts. Insecure individuals over-explain themselves without being asked. Too many details. Too much justification. Too quick to clarify. Around an INFJ, something subtle happens inside insecure people. They begin defending themselves before they're accused of anything. The INFJ doesn't interrogate, doesn't challenge, doesn't even raise suspicion outwardly. They simply listen. But their attention is different. It's steady, undistracted, almost surgical. And that kind of listening creates space. Space makes hidden tension louder. When someone feels unsure of their own motives or afraid of being misunderstood, that silence feels like exposure. So they rush to fill it. They elaborate on simple decisions. They explain stories twice. They add disclaimers no one requested. It isn't because the INFJ demanded clarity. It's because the presence of calm observation makes internal doubt rise to the surface. The INFJ's stillness acts like a mirror. Not a harsh one, not a confrontational one, but a reflective surface that reveals what is already unsettled within. Insecure individuals feel it first in their chest, a subtle tightening, then in their words. They begin justifying tone, intent, reasoning. They say, "I didn't mean it like that," even when no one implied they did. They narrate their own innocence. They attempt to control the interpretation before it forms. The INFJ remains composed, offering minimal reaction, and that composure removes the feedback insecure people rely on. Without interruption or reassurance, their own uncertainty grows louder. Over-explaining becomes a self-soothing mechanism, an attempt to manage how they are perceived. What they don't realize is that the more they explain, the more they reveal. Not because the INFJ is judging, but because inconsistency surfaces when someone speaks beyond necessity. The rhythm changes. The story stretches. Emotional undertones slip through. The INFJ doesn't need to confront. Clarity assembles itself quietly. Insecure individuals feel exposed not by accusation, but by their own surplus of words. The INFJ remains neutral, grounded, and observant, while the other person unintentionally discloses the very doubt they were trying to conceal. And that is the silent dynamic at play. Calm attention destabilizes fragile certainty. In the presence of quiet perception, insecurity speaks louder than confidence ever could. People reveal personal details faster than they normally would. Too much honesty. Too quickly. Too unfiltered. Around an INFJ, something disarming happens beneath the surface of conversation. The room doesn't change dramatically. The lighting stays the same. The voices remain steady. Yet, within minutes, someone who usually guards their inner world begins sharing stories they rarely tell. It's not because the INFJ pries. They don't interrogate or push for depth. They simply hold space with focused presence. Their attention feels uninterrupted, grounded, undistracted by the need to dominate the exchange. That kind of attention lowers defenses almost invisibly. When people feel genuinely heard without interruption, something inside them loosens. Emotional armor relaxes. Words move before caution can catch them. The INFJ's silence plays a powerful role in this shift. It is not empty silence, it is engaged stillness. They nod subtly, maintain steady eye contact, and respond with measured empathy rather than dramatic reaction. That restraint signals safety. Safety dissolves hesitation. Someone begins with a small detail, something mildly personal, testing the emotional atmosphere. The INFJ remains calm, steady, non-judgmental. Encouraged, the other person goes deeper. Stories become layered. Childhood memories surface.
Regrets slip out unexpectedly. Even vulnerabilities that were meant to stay guarded find their way into the open.
The pace accelerates not because the INFJ asks more questions, but because their quiet receptivity creates a psychological opening where honesty feels natural. What makes this dynamic powerful is that the INFJ rarely reveals equivalent information in return. They listen more than they disclose. Their presence absorbs, organizes, and holds what is shared without dramatizing it. This balance creates a subtle imbalance in disclosure, and most people do not realize it until much later. After the conversation ends, they may wonder why they spoke so freely. They replay the interaction and recognize how much they revealed without being prompted. The INFJ did not manipulate the exchange. They simply embodied attentive stillness. And in that stillness, people lower their guard, speak from places usually protected, and offer parts of themselves faster than they ever intended. Manipulative types test boundaries subtly before committing to behavior. Small tests, quiet probes, harmless jokes that aren't harmless. Around an INFJ, manipulation rarely arrives loudly. It arrives disguised as charm, curiosity, or exaggerated vulnerability. A comment that pushes slightly too far. A favor requested with strategic timing. A compliment layered with expectation. Manipulative personalities rarely reveal themselves immediately. They measure the emotional terrain first. They study reactions. They observe how much flexibility exists in someone's boundaries before deciding how far to go. What they don't expect is that the INFJ is studying them at the same time. While the manipulator believes they are initiating control, the INFJ is already tracking tone shifts, micro delays in speech, the subtle hunger behind validation-seeking questions. The test often begins with something small. A minor boundary is nudged. A sarcastic remark disguised as humor. An emotional story told to see how much empathy is offered. Manipulators look for over-accommodation, for signs that the INFJ will prioritize harmony over firmness. If the INFJ laughs politely but does not fully engage, the manipulator adjusts. If the INFJ provides empathy but withholds over-involvement, the manipulator recalibrates. Every subtle interaction becomes data. What separates the INFJ from others is their internal awareness during this process. They sense the shift in intent before the behavior escalates. Their intuition flags patterns quickly. They do not always confront the test directly, but they register it with precision. When manipulators realize their subtle probes are not yielding leverage, tension rises internally for them. The INFJ's calm neutrality disrupts the expected script. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond with measured boundaries, sometimes as simple as a change in tone, a shorter reply, or a refusal to expand on a vulnerable topic. This quiet firmness communicates something unmistakable. Access is conditional. The manipulator may attempt a second test, slightly more direct than the first, but the INFJ's consistent composure removes the emotional reward. Eventually, the manipulative type faces a decision: escalate openly or retreat. Around an INFJ who is aware, subtle boundary testing rarely evolves into full control. It dissolves under observation. Genuine people relax quickly, sensing emotional safety and authenticity. Safety. Ease. Unspoken permission to exhale. Around an INFJ, authentic people feel something shift inside them almost immediately. There is no performance required, no strategic self-editing, no need to inflate stories or protect image. The INFJ's presence does not chase attention, does not compete for dominance, does not subtly measure worth through status. Instead, it offers stillness, attentive, grounded, quietly open. Genuine individuals sense this difference instinctively. Their shoulders drop. Their tone softens. The guarded pauses between sentences begin to disappear.
It is not dramatic, it is subtle.
But the relaxation is visible in micro-movements, the unclenched jaw, the slower breathing, the unfiltered laughter that arrives without calculation.
What allows this relaxation is consistency.
The INFJ's emotional field does not fluctuate unpredictably.
Their reactions are measured. Their listening is focused.
When someone speaks from a real place, the INFJ meets it with grounded attention, not exaggerated validation. Authentic people recognize that they are not being scanned for weaknesses or silently judged.
They are being understood.
There is a difference between curiosity and scrutiny, and genuine individuals feel that distinction clearly. They sense that their words are landing somewhere steady. No hidden agenda, no emotional games, no hierarchy to navigate. That kind of environment disarms defensive reflexes that most people carry unconsciously into every interaction. The effect becomes even clearer in contrast. In rooms where social dynamics are competitive or performative, genuine individuals often remain guarded. Around an INFJ, however, the atmosphere shifts toward emotional neutrality. There is space to speak without interruption. Silence feels comfortable instead of threatening. Honest statements are received without dramatic reaction. Over time, this consistent safety builds quiet trust. Authentic people begin sharing thoughts they would normally filter, not because they are pressured, but because they feel understood. The INFJ does not force vulnerability, they allow it. And for those who live from a place of sincerity, that calm authenticity becomes magnetic. It creates a rare moment where someone feels seen without being exposed. Some people never notice what shifts around an INFJ, but the ones who do feel it instantly. The lowered voices, the softened edges, the unspoken respect. It isn't loud power. It isn't dominance. It's presence. And presence changes rooms without asking for permission. When authenticity meets authenticity, something stabilizes. No performance. No competition. Just clarity. If you've ever felt people adjust their energy around you without understanding why, this wasn't random. It was awareness meeting awareness. So tell me in one word, what do people feel first around an INFJ? Comment that word below, and if this resonates with you, subscribe to Brainy for more insights into the quiet power most people never learn to recognize.